What if the silence you're hearing isn't peace? It's the sound of someone giving up on you, not out of rage, not out of hate, but because something inside her already left long ago. That's the moment most men miss. Not because they're blind, but because they're afraid to see. It's easier to pretend nothing's changed, to believe a rough patch is just temporary, to convince yourself that love is still there, just hidden beneath stress, timing, or circumstances. But deep down, something feels off. She's right next to you, yet miles away. You try to reconnect, but every gesture feels like it's met with distance. And that ache in your chest, that's not confusion, that's truth knocking. That's your soul whispering something's not right. You see, we're wired to hold on, even to people who've already let go. We replay old moments, grasp at memories, and feed ourselves the lie that love is enough. But love, real love, is more than a memory. It's presence, it's effort, it's emotional investment. And when those vanish, you're not in a relationship anymore. You're in a one-sided fantasy. The hardest part isn't watching her drift. It's realizing you tolerated it. You made excuses. You explained away her detachment. And now what used to feel like home feels like a stranger's silence. You sense she's already done. But you can't bring yourself to accept it. Because accepting it means confronting the reality that something inside you allowed this to happen. But here's what you need to understand. This pain you're in, it's not here to destroy you, it's here to rebuild you. Because if she's truly done with you, then you're being handed the greatest opportunity of your life, the chance to wake up, to reclaim your dignity, to stop living on emotional scraps and finally start living with self-respect. She's not the end. She's the mirror, the message, the shift. And this is your moment, not to win her back, but to win yourself back. You don't need her love to validate your worth. You need your own courage to face this storm and rise above it. That starts by being brutally honest with yourself. Is she still there with you, or just physically present while emotionally gone? Have you been holding on to hope or hiding from the truth? The answers may sting, but they will also set you free, because clarity is painful, but it's also power. Stay with this message, not because it will give you the false hope that she'll return, but because it will help you return to yourself. You're about to see the signs not as losses, but as lessons, not as rejection, but redirection. Every second you stay blind to the truth is a second you delay your evolution. But if you're ready, if you're done living in confusion, then keep listening. Because what's coming next will show you exactly how to stop begging for love and start becoming the kind of man who never has to. When a woman stops trying, she's not being cold. She's making peace with a decision. Her silence isn't passive. It's powerful. It means she's already grieved the relationship in private. She's already had the conversations in her mind. She's already mourned the loss of what the two of you could have been. So when her effort fades, when her voice softens, when she no longer reacts, it's not because she doesn't care. It's because she's finally decided not to care anymore. And that should shake you to your core. You used to be her safe space, her motivation, her emotional home. But now you're just someone she coexists with, someone she used to admire, someone she now sees through. You'll notice it in the little things. She won't initiate conversations. She won't ask where you're going. She won't get upset like she used to. And you'll mistake it for maturity, for calm, for progress. But it's not. It's distance. It's emotional disconnection disguised as politeness. She's being quiet because she no longer wants to fight for something that only she's been fighting for. This is what most men don't realize. A woman doesn't stop trying all at once. She stops slowly, gradually, piece by piece, until one day you look into her eyes and feel nothing, not love, not hate, just absence. And that absence is louder than any argument you've ever had. That's when you know she's done, not out of cruelty, but because she finally realized she deserves more than waiting for you to notice she's hurting. That moment is terrifying, but it's also sacred, because in that void, you get to meet yourself. The real you. Not the version that coasted on her affection, not the one that took her loyalty for granted, but the man you could become if you finally took ownership. You see, her detachment isn't a punishment. It's a signal, a wake-up call, a final chance to either evolve or repeat. The choice is yours. Will you keep pretending everything's fine, or will you step into the brutal clarity that forces transformation? Because there's something deeper going on here. Her withdrawal is a reflection of how far you've drifted from your own values, from your own standards. Somewhere along the way, you stopped leading. You stopped showing up with strength, presence, and purpose. And she felt that every day, until her heart had no choice but to shut down to protect itself. Don't blame her for that. Blame the part of you that became passive, unconscious, emotionally unavailable. Then forgive yourself and rise. You can't fix what's already broken beyond repair, but you can fix yourself. You can rebuild, and you can become the kind of man who never lets another woman feel invisible again. This isn't about getting her back. This is about never losing yourself again in the first place. Her silence was the answer you were afraid of. Now let it be the reason you grow into someone who never ignores the warning signs again. When a woman stops asking questions, it's not because she trusts more, it's because she started to care less. Curiosity is a sign of emotional investment. When she used to ask about your day, your dreams, your thoughts, it wasn't small talk. It was connection. It was her way of saying, you matter to me, your inner world matters to me. But now, there's a shift. The check-ins have stopped. The random texts are rare. The spark in her eyes when you speak is gone. And it's not because she's distracted. It's because she's disconnected. She's no longer searching for you beneath the surface because she no longer sees depth there worth finding. Not because you don't have it, but because you stopped showing it. Somewhere along the line, she felt unheard, unseen, and unimportant. And when that feeling sits inside a woman long enough, it doesn't just grow into resentment. It hardens into indifference. That's the most dangerous emotional place a relationship can reach. Not anger, not even sadness. Indifference. Because indifference is the emotional equivalent of walking away while still sitting beside you. And it leaves you wondering what happened. You didn't change. You stayed consistent. And that's the problem. You became predictable, emotionally unavailable, numb. You stopped bringing new energy into the relationship. You stopped being curious about her. And in turn, she stopped being curious about you. Because what's the point of asking someone how they feel if the answer is always shallow? What's the point of staying emotionally open when the person across from you is emotionally closed? This is what emotional intimacy requires, presence. And when you stop offering presence, you create distance. Not the kind you can see, but the kind that's felt in the space between words, in the silence after a question goes unanswered, in the way her voice gets quieter over time. That's the sound of a woman slowly retreating, or not physically, but spiritually. She's pulling her energy back, not to punish you, but to protect herself. That's the reality you have to face now. Not because you're broken, but because you've broken rhythm. You stopped dancing with her emotionally. You stopped showing up with depth, attention, and vulnerability. And now she's drifting, because what else is there to hold on to? That ache in your chest right now, that's not heartbreak. That's clarity. That's the moment you realize how little it takes to lose someone who used to be all in. But this isn't the end unless you choose to make it one. It's your opportunity to grow into the kind of man who never lets connection die from emotional neglect again. To awaken the part of you that listens with intention, speaks with purpose, and values emotional presence over comfort. You don't need to win her back. You need to earn your emotional depth back. If you want someone to ask about your heart, make sure it's worth exploring. There's a moment every man misinterprets, the moment she stops arguing. He thinks things are finally calm, that maybe the worst has passed, that the storm is over. But what he doesn't realize is that the storm didn't pass. She just stopped inviting him into it. She's no longer fighting because she's already lost hope that anything will change. That silence you're celebrating, it's not peace, it's surrender. It's the sound of a woman who's emotionally emptied herself trying to get through to you, and now she's conserving her energy for the exit. You used to trigger passion, now you trigger apathy. And nothing should scare you more than a woman who no longer feels anything. Because love doesn't die with one final blow. It dies slowly through neglect, through the accumulation of unheard feelings, through being met with indifference every time she raised her voice, through being told she's overreacting instead of being understood. When she used to bring up her pain, it wasn't to attack, it was to repair. But you took her frustration as drama. You saw her tears as manipulation. And so she stopped explaining herself. She stopped trying to be seen. A woman doesn't walk away when she's angry. She walks away when she's numb, when she no longer believes her words matter, when your silence becomes more familiar than your support. That's when she starts shutting doors in her heart, quietly, permanently, and you won't even notice until it's too late. You'll think things are fine, but things aren't fine, they're just fading, and you're too distracted, too prideful, or too passive to see the signs. There is a deep pain behind her withdrawal. one you caused, not because you meant to, but because you stopped being emotionally present. You didn't listen with empathy. You didn't respond with compassion. You just brushed it off over and over until she learned that silence hurt less than your indifference. So now she's silent. And you mistake that silence as strength in the relationship. But it's the opposite. It's the beginning of the end. You have two choices now. Keep pretending this emotional distance is stability, or take responsibility. Start showing up like a man who's willing to lean in, to face discomfort, to grow, to own the pain you ignored and transform into someone who doesn't flinch at emotional truth. You can't fix her. You can't undo the years of neglect with one good conversation. But you can face yourself, and that's where real change begins. Because when she stopped arguing, she didn't stop caring in that moment. She stopped believing in your potential to care. And that loss of belief is what should wake you up. Not for her approval, but for your evolution. If you want to be the kind of man who's respected, valued, and loved with depth, become the kind of man who listens before it's too late, who leans in, not out, who chooses growth over comfort. The moment you stop being her safe place is the moment you start becoming a stranger, not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly in ways that feel almost invisible. She stops coming to you with her problems. She stops opening up about what's bothering her. She stops sharing the parts of herself that matter most. And at first, you don't notice. You think she's just dealing with things on her own. You assume she's just tired or busy or giving you space. But in reality, she's no longer turning toward you because somewhere along the way, she stopped feeling emotionally safe in your presence. Emotional safety isn't about never making mistakes. It's about showing her consistently that her emotions are valid, that her words won't be twisted, that her vulnerability won't be used against her. But when you minimize her feelings, interrupt her truths, or shut down when she opens up, you don't just silence her in the moment. You train her to go quiet for good. And once she learns that opening up to you equals pain, she starts protecting herself with silence. That's how intimacy dies, not through betrayal, but through emotional absence. You can't love someone fully if they can't bring their full self to you. And when a woman begins censoring her truth around you, it means she no longer trusts you with her heart. That loss of trust doesn't scream. It whispers, in shorter conversations, in distracted glances, in carefully chosen words, in avoiding deep talks because deep talks now feel unsafe. And you'll feel it. You'll feel the gap growing. You'll feel the warmth fading. But you won't know why until you face the truth that it's not what you did once. It's what you stopped doing every day. If you want loyalty, you have to be a sanctuary, not a judge, not a fixer, just a space where she can breathe, a space where she doesn't have to fight to be heard. Because when she feels safe, she gives everything. But when she feels judged, ignored, or emotionally punished, she retreats. And when she retreats far enough, she doesn't come back. You have to ask yourself a hard question. Does she confide in you, or does she avoid you? Does she run toward you when life gets heavy, or does she look elsewhere for peace? If the answer is painful, then good. Pain means you're awake now, and being awake means you have a chance to change. Not to win her back, but to become the kind of man who never lets safety die in the first place. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. She was never asking for flawless. She was asking for real. And if you couldn't give her that, don't be surprised when she gives her soul to silence. But if you're still breathing, you're still capable of change. Build yourself into the man who leads with safety, not ego, with presence, not pride, with truth, not distance. That's where real connection begins. By the time she physically leaves, she's already left emotionally. Long before she packs her things, she's been slowly packing pieces of herself. Her laughter, her admiration, her softness, her trust, they've been disappearing day by day. And you didn't notice, not because you're heartless, but because you got used to her presence. You thought she'd always be there. You thought love meant permanence. But love doesn't wait forever. It fades when it's not nourished. It dies when it's taken for granted. And by the time you finally feel the emptiness, she's already gone somewhere else in her mind. She's imagined life without you 1,000 times. She's rehearsed the silence. She's pictured the freedom, the peace. The version of herself that no longer feels small, no longer begs to be noticed, no longer cries in rooms where her tears mean nothing. That version of her, the one that lives with dignity, that walks without fear, that breathes without tension, she's already connected to that. And once a woman finds peace within herself, you can't reach her the same way anymore. You become part of a past she had to survive, not because she wanted to forget you, but because she had to remember herself. A woman doesn't just walk away from the man you are. She walks away from the man you refuse to become. She walks away from the version of the relationship she kept hoping would evolve. She walks away because staying would mean abandoning herself. And no woman with self-worth can stay in a place that makes her feel invisible. She gave you time. She gave you signs. She gave you her soul, and when that wasn't enough to move you, she moved herself, internally first, emotionally next, and finally, physically. But by the time you see her leaving, she's already grieved it. She's already healed. She's already started writing a new chapter, one that doesn't center around waiting. This is where men wake up too late. They realize what they had when it's already gone. They see her strength not as defiance, but as the recovery from a love that left her depleted. If you're hearing this now, and it hits you, don't use that pain to spiral. Use it to shift, use it to build, because the truth is, you weren't abandoned. You were warned. You just didn't listen. And now you get to choose. Will you keep chasing a ghost, or will you confront the version of you that let her slip away? You can't go back and change the past, but you can change what you do with the pain. You can turn the silence into self-awareness. You can turn the regret into responsibility, and you can turn the loss into leadership over your own life. She's not your punishment. She was your mirror. And now that the mirror is gone, it's your job to become the man you should have been all along. Not for her. For you. A woman doesn't always announce her departure. Sometimes she just leaves silently, emotionally first, then physically. No arguments, no final speech, just distance. And that silence isn't confusion, it's closure. It's the kind of goodbye that doesn't come with a door slam, but with a heart that finally stopped hoping. You'll try to make sense of it. You'll wonder why she didn't say more, why she didn't fight harder. But the truth is, she did. Just not in the ways you recognized. She fought in every moment she stayed when she felt unheard. In every moment she forgave what broke her spirit. In every moment she tried again, even when she felt alone in the effort. Eventually, trying becomes exhausting, not dramatic, not loud, just deeply soul-level exhausting. So when she stops trying, she doesn't feel rage, she feels relief. She no longer wants to explain why she's leaving. She no longer feels the need to defend her choice. Because by that point, she knows you either couldn't hear her or chose not to. And once a woman accepts that, she stops needing to be understood. She just needs to move on, quietly, completely, without another round of questions or one more empty promise that change is coming. That's what you need to understand. When communication ends, it's not because there's nothing to say. It's because everything's already been said. She's not being cold. She's conserving herself, protecting what's left of her energy, rebuilding her dignity in silence. Because explaining her pain one more time won't heal it. What heals it is choosing herself, walking away without needing applause or revenge, just freedom. If you're waiting for a goodbye that sounds like closure, you might wait forever. Sometimes closure is the absence of words. Sometimes it's her walking out the door and not turning around. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because she refuses to hurt herself anymore. And if you're wise, you won't chase her. You'll reflect. You'll ask yourself the questions that really matter. When did she stop feeling safe? When did her smile become forced? When did your presence become a place of pressure instead of peace? There's a power in silence, but it's not always yours. This time, it's hers. And it's the result of every ignored feeling, every dismissed emotion, every time she was told to calm down when all she wanted was to be heard. Now the calm is real, but it comes at the cost of connection. It's the calm after surrender, and there's no turning back from that. Let her silence be your awakening. Let it be the spark that burns away your old habits. You don't need closure from her. You need truth from within. If you're still asking why she left, look at what she endured. Her silence wasn't cruel, it was earned. And now the only voice you need to listen to is your own, finally honest, finally awake, finally ready to become more than you were. What hurts more than losing her is realizing how deeply you lost yourself while trying to keep her. You stopped leading with strength. You stopped showing up with clarity. You started bending, shrinking, silencing your instincts just to keep the peace. And in that slow erosion of your identity, you betrayed the one person who needed you most, yourself. You thought compromise was love. You thought sacrificing your voice was noble, but all it did was teach her you didn't value your own boundaries, and slowly neither did she. When you abandon yourself to keep someone else, you don't win their heart. You lose their respect. Because the core of masculine strength is self-respect. When that dissolves, everything else follows. The admiration, the attraction, the emotional gravity that once pulled her in. It all fades when you stop standing tall in your truth. She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you forgot who you were. And that version of you, the one who tiptoed, who begged, who feared her distance more than he feared becoming hollow, is not who you were born to be. You were not created to chase approval. You were not meant to rely on someone else's attention to feel whole. You were built to lead yourself, to stand rooted in who you are, to be a man who walks in alignment with his values, even if it costs him love. Because anything you gain by abandoning yourself will eventually turn to resentment. You can't keep pretending weakness is kindness. You can't keep calling silence maturity when it's actually fear. There comes a moment when you must choose, continue betraying yourself or rebuild. And the moment she pulled away, the moment she stopped fighting, the moment she stopped showing up, that was your invitation. Not to beg for her back, but to return to the man you left behind, the man who had standards, the man who knew his mission, the man who didn't need validation to move forward. That man didn't need to be needed. He needed to be real. This pain you're carrying, it's your mirror. It's reflecting every compromise that wasn't rooted in strength. Every time you silenced your gut to maintain her comfort. Every time you turned away from what you knew was true because you feared being alone. But you're not alone. You're awakening. And that loneliness, it's not emptiness, it's space. Space to rebuild, to rediscover, to rise. Stop asking why she's gone. Ask why you left yourself to begin with. You don't need her to come back. You need to come back to yourself, to the grounded, focused, present version of you who leads from purpose, not panic, who speaks from truth, not tension, who moves forward not to prove something, but because standing still is no longer an option. This isn't about getting her back. It's about never losing yourself again. That's your work now. That's your path forward, and that's the man you must become. Stop waiting for closure. Stop hoping for an explanation that makes the pain make sense. Stop holding your breath for the message, the apology, the moment she looks back and admits she should have stayed. That moment may never come. And even if it did, it wouldn't save you. Because real healing doesn't begin when someone tells you why they hurt you. It begins the moment you decide to stop bleeding for them. The moment you take your hands off the door they already closed and start building a door of your own. You keep replaying conversations, digging for meaning, searching for signs you missed. But no answer from her can answer what you now owe yourself. You don't need her reasons. You need your responsibility. You need to ask yourself why you waited for things to collapse before you started to wake up. Why you tolerated silence, tolerated disconnection, tolerated a life that left your soul starving for more. You didn't lose her in one moment. You lost her in every moment you betrayed your intuition, downplayed your needs, and avoided the truth that something had already shifted. There's no dignity in clinging to someone who has emotionally let go. There's no honor in trying to prove your worth to someone who's already stopped seeing it. Let her silence be the signal, not to chase, but to choose. Choose to end the cycle. Choose to stop waiting. Choose to step into a new identity, one that doesn't need anyone's permission to begin again. You are not broken because she left. You are broken if you keep standing still in her absence, hoping the past will rewrite itself. High-value men do not beg for closure. They create it. They close the door with truth, not fantasy, with acceptance, not resistance. They feel the pain, but they do not drown in it. They let it purify them, sharpen them, make them alert to the patterns that brought them here. Because everything that ends teaches you something about what you allowed. And if you're willing to listen, you'll hear the message louder than any explanation she could have given. This is not about moving on quickly. This is about moving forward deliberately, with awareness, with purpose, with integrity. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You just have to make sure it leads to something greater than grief. You have a choice right now: stay stuck in the questions or rise through the answers only found within. Closure is not a door someone else locks or unlocks. It's a door you build with your own hands, brick by brick, choice by choice. And when it's finished, you don't just walk through it. You walk through it as someone reborn. Let this be the final moment you wait for anything outside yourself to heal you. The work is yours now. And that's the most powerful place you can stand. Not waiting, but rising. Face the truth without flinching. Stop decorating the pain with fantasies. Stop turning red flags into reasons to stay. You didn't just lose her. You lost the version of yourself that thought love could survive without respect, without effort, without emotional depth. The man who ignored the signals because he was too afraid to start over is not the man who will rebuild. That man lived in denial. This one must rise in clarity. You can't evolve while defending your old patterns. You can't heal while protecting the story that broke you. Emotional sobriety is brutal. It strips away illusions. It reveals the gaps in your integrity. It forces you to confront your part in everything. No more blaming. No more deflecting. You tolerated things that insulted your spirit. You accepted the bare minimum and called it loyalty. You stayed quiet when your soul screamed for more. And now, here you are, not broken, not abandoned, but offered the clearest invitation of your life to stop lying to yourself, to stop pretending confusion is the problem. You were never confused. You were unwilling to admit the truth because the truth demanded change. There's nothing wrong with feeling lost. There's everything wrong with staying there. Your heart isn't fragile. It's just been untrained. Untrained to trust itself. Untrained to set standards. Untrained to walk away when dignity is on the line. But that changes now. The same mind that kept you stuck is not the mind that will lead you forward. You must rebuild your mental framework from the ground up. Thought by thought, decision by decision, discipline over comfort, ownership over blame. Healing is not soft, it is war. Against your weakness, against your old story, against the habits that kept you silent when you needed to speak. This is not about her anymore. It's about what you do with the version of yourself that let this happen. If you don't face him now, you'll meet him again. In the next relationship, in the next disappointment, in the next silent goodbye. And every time it will feel familiar, because pain always returns where the lesson was ignored. No more shortcuts. No more waiting for life to feel easy. It's not supposed to be. You're supposed to grow stronger, wiser, sharper. This pain is your permission to let go of your past identity. The one that was scared to demand more, the one that mistook tolerance for love, the one that abandoned himself in the name of connection. You don't need another chance with her. You need a new agreement with yourself. Make the promise. You will not beg again. You will not chase again. You will not water yourself down just to be tolerated. You will rise fully, quietly, relentlessly. And the man who emerges from that fire won't just attract love, he'll command it. Not through force, but through presence, through power, through truth. Emotional sobriety is the first step. From here, everything changes. Because now you see everything clearly, and you'll never unsee it again. You don't rise by getting her back. You rise by getting yourself back. The version of you that lived with conviction. The one who walked with purpose, not anxiety. The one who didn't overthink every move, second-guess every word, or live in fear of losing someone who had already checked out. That version of you still exists. He's buried beneath layers of emotional chaos, broken expectations, and the shame that comes with watching someone fall out of love with the man you became while trying not to lose her. But he's not gone. He's waiting for your decision. The decision to stop playing small. Growth begins where excuses end. It begins when you admit you were the reason you settled. You were the reason you tolerated distance. You were the reason you looked away from the signs, because the truth felt heavier than the lie. But truth doesn't destroy. It liberates. It cuts through the fog. It sharpens your vision. It wakes you up to the life you were meant to lead, not the one you were sleepwalking through. No more sleepwalking. No more waiting for someone else to validate your worth. That's over now. This is your line in the sand. Pain changes people, but the kind of change it creates depends on what you do with it. You can let it make you bitter, closed off, hard to reach, or you can let it shape you into a man who no longer builds his identity around being chosen. A man who knows his value because he's done the inner work. Not the kind that looks good on the surface, but the kind that no one sees. The kind that takes silence, solitude, and relentless self-discipline. That kind of work changes how you show up. It changes how you speak, how you lead, how you love. Because now you're rooted. Now you don't bend to avoid conflict, you face it. You don't collapse under pressure, you use it. And you don't shrink when someone pulls away. You stay grounded in who you are. You were never meant to be the man who gets destroyed when someone leaves. You were meant to be the man who becomes unstoppable when he realizes he was depending on the wrong kind of love to feel whole. This moment isn't just about her being done with you. It's about you being done with your old self, the self that tolerated confusion, that traded honesty for harmony, that feared rejection more than he valued truth. That man had to die so this version could be born. Stand in that fire. Let it burn away your weakness. Let it purify your decisions. Let it forge a mindset that doesn't crack under loss. You're not here to win her approval. You're here to reclaim your power. No begging, no chasing, just rising. And when you rise with clarity, with strength, with silence, something powerful happens. You stop needing to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. And that choice changes everything. The moment you choose yourself is the moment everything begins to shift. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop handing your power to things outside of your control. You stop trying to earn love through sacrifice. You stop waiting for someone to see your worth before you believe in it yourself. That shift isn't loud, or it's not dramatic. It's quiet, steady, internal, and it's real. Because once you make that decision, your energy changes. You're no longer driven by fear, scarcity, or insecurity. You're driven by alignment, by integrity, by a grounded strength that doesn't ask for permission to exist. There's a different kind of confidence that comes from losing what you thought you couldn't live without and surviving it. It's not arrogance. It's not bravado. It's peace. The kind of peace that says, I don't need to chase. I don't need to prove. I don't need to beg for love that costs me my self-respect. That's the turning point. When you look at the version of yourself who tolerated mixed signals, emotional withdrawal, and silence, and you no longer recognize him, not with judgment, but with clarity, because he was doing his best with what he knew. But now, you know better, and that means you do better. That's what transformation really is. Not an explosion, not a single breakthrough, but the daily decision to stop betraying yourself for temporary comfort. It's the hard conversations with yourself. The ones where you admit, I stayed too long. I settled too often. I ignored too many truths. And instead of hating yourself for that, you own it fully, without blame, without shame. Because that ownership is freedom. It gives you your power back. It allows you to take the lessons without carrying the weight of regret. You were never weak for loving deeply. You were only lost when you abandoned yourself in the process. But now you're done abandoning. You're done bending. You're done shrinking. Because when a man finally sees himself clearly, he stops asking the world to validate him. He becomes the standard. He becomes the anchor. He becomes unshakable. Not because he has all the answers, but because he's no longer afraid of the truth. That's the man you're becoming. The one who doesn't get thrown off course when someone walks away. The one who doesn't collapse when love ends. The one who doesn't define his worth by who stays or who goes. He defines it by who he becomes, by how he shows up, by the values he refuses to compromise, no matter what's at stake. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to lead. And real leadership starts with the courage to choose yourself when it would be easier to fall back into old patterns. That's how you reclaim your identity. That's how you build unshakable self-respect, not in one moment, but in every choice that follows this one. This is your rebirth. Quiet, solid, absolute. And from here forward, everything changes because now you're no longer waiting, you're becoming. You don't need to be loved by everyone. You need to be respected by the man in the mirror. That's the foundation. That's the standard. Because no amount of external affection will fill the void left by self-abandonment. You could be surrounded by praise and still feel hollow if you're not proud of how you move, how you lead, how you carry yourself when no one's watching. The real power is internal. It's the quiet confidence of a man who knows who he is, even when the world forgets, even when she leaves, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. You're not defined by who walks away. You're defined by who you refuse to stop becoming. The truth is, most men never rebuild after heartbreak. They just distract themselves. They run into the next situation. They fill the silence with noise. They numb the sting with temporary comfort. But healing doesn't happen in avoidance. Happens in confrontation, in solitude, in the hard work of sitting with your patterns and asking yourself, what was I allowing that cost me my self-respect? Because that's where transformation begins. Not in blaming her, but in owning your blind spots with ruthless honesty. You're not here to win someone back. You're here to become someone you never lose again. The kind of man who doesn't chase closure, the kind who doesn't fear solitude, the kind who leads with calm presence and unshakable truth. Because when your identity is built on self-respect, no rejection can dismantle it. No distance can make you question it. You stop reacting and you start responding. You stop reaching and you start rising. And people feel that shift. The world feels it because now you're moving from conviction, not craving. Every time you chose comfort over truth, you lost something. A piece of your clarity, a piece of your strength, a piece of your self-trust. But the beautiful thing about rock bottom is that it clears the noise. It strips away the distractions. It exposes everything. And in that raw, exposed space, something powerful is born. Hunger, vision, discipline. The kind of discipline that rebuilds a man brick by brick, moment by moment, until he stands taller than the pain that broke him. Don't fear the silence you're in right now. Embrace it. Let it work on you. Let it teach you what noise never could. You don't need someone to come back and see your worth. You need to rise until it's impossible to forget. That's not ego. That's truth. That's the path of a man who refuses to stay small for the comfort of anyone. You're not walking backward. You're walking through fire. And what comes out on the other side isn't the same man who walked in. Stand tall in your solitude. Let it be the soil where your next chapter is planted. You don't need saving. You need building. And you're the only one who can do it. Start now. Keep going. And never lower yourself again. Every moment you spend waiting for someone to return is a moment you steal from your future. That life you keep imagining, the one where you're calm, grounded, respected, it doesn't begin when someone else changes their mind. It begins the second you stop putting your life on hold for people who already made their decision. A man becomes powerful the day he stops hoping and starts building. The day he says, this is my line. I'm not standing in place anymore. I'm not waiting to be chosen. I'm choosing myself and moving forward with discipline and direction. You don't rise by trying to make people stay. You rise by refusing to lower your standards just to keep their presence. Because love that requires you to shrink is not love. Attention that costs your self-worth is not connection. And peace that depends on someone else's mood is not peace at all. You have to raise your floor, raise your minimum, raise your level of self-respect so high that anything less than mutual effort feels like poison. And that starts with knowing what you will no longer tolerate, not just from others, but from yourself. No more excuses, no more negotiating with your values, no more pretending you're fine with half-effort love and one-sided conversations. You've outgrown that. You've outgrown apologizing for having needs. You've outgrown over-explaining your worth. From now on, your presence speaks for itself. Your energy sets the tone. Your silence becomes more powerful than your explanations. Because when you truly embody your value, you don't chase. You attract. You don't beg. You build. And you don't settle. You separate. This is where the shift happens, when your standards become sacred, when your time becomes valuable, when your energy becomes protected. You stop entertaining people who drain you. You stop responding to silence with desperation. You stop confusing potential with commitment. Because now, you're not looking for promises, you're looking for consistency. And if they can't meet you where you are, you don't dim your light. You keep walking, not out of spite, not out of ego, out of self-respect. Let this moment be your pivot. Let it be the one where you stop orbiting around people who never chose to understand you. Let it be the one where you turn your pain into precision, where you stop trying to go back to what broke you and instead build something so strong, so clear, so grounded, that the past no longer holds power over you. You don't need revenge. You need results. You don't need to be seen again. You need to become so undeniably solid that your growth speaks louder than any apology ever could. Let your progress echo in silence. Let your presence remind the world who you are. You're not here to be tolerated. You're here to lead, to elevate, to transform. And nothing, not rejection, not loss, not silence, can stop a man who decides to rise. Keep rising. The work is hard, but so are you. The strength you're searching for isn't somewhere out there. It's already inside you, buried beneath layers of hesitation, fear, and the habit of looking outward for answers. You've been trained to believe that closure, validation, or even redemption would come from someone else's words. But the truth is, nothing she says now will change what you must face. This path you're on is no longer about her. It's about everything you once ignored in yourself, every red flag you dismissed, every gut feeling you buried, every quiet voice inside you that whispered, "This isn't it," and was silenced for the sake of comfort. That voice needs to be honored now. If you want peace, you have to stop making war with your own standards. You have to stop justifying inconsistency just because you are afraid to be alone. You have to stop giving effort to people who only show up when it's convenient. Your time, your energy, your presence, they are sacred. And from this moment on, they must be earned, not assumed. You're not a placeholder. You're not a backup plan. You're not an emotional safety net for someone who doesn't know what they want. You are a foundation. And foundations don't move to accommodate what isn't meant to stand. It's time to reclaim the pieces of yourself you gave away too easily, the moments you betrayed your instincts, the times you made yourself small just to keep the peace. That's not humility. That's self-abandonment. And nothing good can grow in soil where truth is suppressed. You weren't too much. You weren't too needy. You were just asking for something real in a world that fears depth. And you can't apologize for wanting connection with substance. You can't shame yourself for needing reciprocity. What you asked for wasn't wrong. It just wasn't met by the right presence. Now, you must become what you once searched for: stability, strength, certainty. You have to stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives and start becoming the lead in your own. You are not defined by who left. You are defined by what you do with the space they left behind. You can let it become a void, or you can let it become your arena, where you train, where you evolve, where you decide that the man you're becoming no longer lowers himself to fit into situations that don't reflect his worth. Everything changes when you stop waiting to be understood and start committing to being undeniable. Not loud, not desperate, just clear, certain, grounded. The kind of presence that speaks volumes without saying a word. You don't need to be explained, you need to be experienced. And those who can't meet you at that level will naturally fall away, not because you pushed them, but because your standard became too high for them to reach. This is your power, quiet, relentless, absolute. And it only gets stronger every time you choose yourself over comfort. Keep going. You're closer than you think. The moment you stop settling is the moment you start leading, not just in relationships, but in life. Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. When you accept less in love, you accept less in yourself. You start negotiating your voice, your vision, your value. And it creeps into every area of your life. Your discipline weakens, your focus blurs, your edge softens. That's not just emotional failure. That's identity decay. And if you don't catch it, it becomes your new normal. A watered-down life built on comfort, not conviction. But you're not built for that. You weren't designed to coast, to chase, or to explain yourself to people who only understand your absence after you're gone. You were built to walk with presence, to speak with clarity, to lead with stillness. That's the kind of man who doesn't lose himself when love ends. He finds himself. He steps deeper into his mission. He becomes sharper, clearer, more dangerous in the best way possible. Not to destroy others, but to destroy the version of himself that tolerated anything less than greatness. You've done enough waiting, enough watching your value fluctuate based on someone else's attention, enough replaying conversations that didn't give you answers. You don't need answers. You need a new standard. One that says, my peace is non-negotiable. My time is earned. My love is powerful, but it's never desperate. If it isn't mutual, it's removed. If it isn't deep, it's dismissed. That's not bitterness. That's alignment. That's what happens when a man chooses himself fully, without apology. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Clear on who you are, clear on what you offer, clear on what you will no longer accept. Because clarity is power. Clarity gives you the courage to walk away when your heart still cares. Clarity gives you the patience to wait for what's real, even when your ego wants revenge. Clarity gives you peace that doesn't beg for closure. You become unshakable, not because you're numb, but because you're aligned. This is your foundation now, not emotion, not reaction, but grounded awareness. You know what's real. You know what's true. And you're done lowering yourself for people who can't meet you there. Let them misunderstand you. Let them move on. Let them think you didn't care. You don't need to be understood by those who never tried to listen. You need to be understood by yourself, fully, deeply, without distortion. That's the only validation that matters. From here forward, every step must reflect this new standard. Every action must protect your peace. Every decision must honor your value. You've wasted enough time hoping someone else would give you what you had to build within. Now you build with grit, with grace, with absolute discipline. Because this isn't about proving anything to anyone. This is about becoming undeniable to yourself. And when that happens, everything else aligns. Not because you chased it, but because you rose high enough to meet it. The moment you realize your worth doesn't come from being accepted, everything shifts. You stop performing. You stop overextending. You stop proving. Because a man who knows his value doesn't chase connection. He chooses alignment. He doesn't fear distance. He honors it. He doesn't beg to be seen. He stands so firmly in who he is that those meant to see him never need convincing. That is the kind of power that doesn't shout. It speaks through presence. It speaks through boundaries. It speaks through the quiet confidence of a man who has nothing to prove because he's already decided he's enough. That's where your strength is built, in those silent decisions you make with yourself. To stop lowering the bar just to feel wanted. To stop clinging to people who show up half-hearted. To stop calling chaos love just because it's familiar. You can't build a powerful life on unstable foundations. And inconsistent love, vague attention, and unspoken resentment are not foundations. They're distractions. They keep you spinning, guessing, reaching, and that's not the energy of a man in his power. That's the energy of a man who's forgotten his path. You don't need to chase anyone. You need to return to that path. This is the season where everything you do must reflect discipline, not reaction, not emotional reactivity, but grounded, ruthless discipline. You feel the pain and you still keep your standards. You feel the void and you don't rush to fill it with temporary comfort. You feel the sting of being left behind and you still walk forward, because walking forward is what rebuilds you. That's how you rise, not by being okay all the time, but by choosing the higher road when everything in you wants to fall back. Let go of the idea that you need someone to see your value in order for it to be real. Value doesn't need recognition to exist. It just needs to be honored. And the first person who must honor it is you. That means not settling. That means not reaching. That means not hoping someone will wake up and suddenly realize what they lost. Because when you're in your power, you don't wait for anyone to realize anything. You become so focused on your growth that their absence becomes irrelevant. Stop checking who's watching. Stop wondering if she regrets it. Stop analyzing silence. None of that serves you. What serves you is the next decision, the next action, the next disciplined move toward the man you are becoming. That's how real confidence is forged. Not from praise, from progress. Not from attention, from alignment. And that kind of confidence is untouchable. You didn't lose yourself to stay lost. You broke so you could rebuild stronger, sharper, clearer. This is the moment you decide that your standards are not optional, that your energy is not free, that your presence is not a gift for the ungrateful. Own that, live that, and never fall back into a version of yourself that needed to be needed. You're done waiting. You're becoming. Keep going.